G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today's episode is going to be something quite a bit different. We're going to do some rumour mongering. Why now? This is not a channel that's really dealt with rumours over the years. I'm more of a strict facts kind of guy. If I see the fact in a situation, then we talk about it. This is more intangible. But I was past a series of posts today, and the classic Games Workshop leaks, and I wanted to talk about them because so many of them are blowing smoke up my ass, essentially, because they're things that I have been saying for years. So if they pan out, I'll be quite surprised. So we're going to go through those as just something different because this is one of the last videos I get to do before I go away. So the first one on the list is all resin is being phased out by 2025 to comply with new government rulings on non-recyclable plastic to avoid bigger tax charges. Yeah, I believe that, but I would also add, because it's more cost efficient to use automated processes such as plastic injection molding, resin does not do that. The next is the Beasts of Chaos are being moved to balance out the old world and have more variety to avoid another Horus Heresy where players still scream for Eldar or Orcs to this day. They were planned for an Age of Sigmar revamp at the start of 3rd edition Age of Sigmar, including the Karagnos being the centerpiece, but it was obviously scrapped. Instead, it's this. So they get a new The Old World range without actually having to design one. Kislev was scrapped, but because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Apparently, they're already in Games Workshop's Book of Grudges for all the recasting that comes out of Russia, but the timing was also felt to be in poor taste when they're working on the old world and obviously with the events over there. But they aren't scrapped forever, just shelved until that all dies down. Cathay, however, was never really happening, and Araby might happen. Warcry is getting a revamp in a new 3rd edition. It is closer to Mordheim / Necromunda / Middle-earth in rules, and truly Age of Sigmar kill team, and the whole cults in the 8 points idea is being retired. The starter box is going to be Cities of Sigmar versus Skaven. I don't care for the setting. Just give us old Mordheim. That was a really, really fun setting. There are obviously digital content that you can tie into that excellent video game. Mordheim's just more fun, and it has that old world backing. That's more interesting to me than Warcry, especially because in Warcry, people want it to be included into the base game of Age of Sigmar to use these cool miniatures, and it doesn't work well in that regard. And that bloat has just been, in bulk, started to get retired out of Age of Sigmar. Do we really want the bloat to return? Next up, the old world is apparently underperforming against projections, but not massively, mostly attributed to a lack of a big villain draw, when Tomb Kings don't seem to be considered a villain in the grand scheme of things. The first major event, reintroducing more armies from Legends stable, is expected to pick up the slack. Skaven is a popular army among players, but with the intent of keeping the old world and Age of Sigmar divided, the choice was made to give the Age of Sigmar the Skaven for a notable chaos release in 2024, and the old world will be seeing a return of the vampire counts in 2025. The Soulblight Grave Lords in 4th edition Age of Sigmar will be leaning further away from the original vampire counts aesthetic to differentiate the two lines, and expect a new Neferata model. So we've got a few things to unpack in there. So old world is underperforming. Well, I've been saying that since day dot, but for different reasons, and I don't think it's because there is no big bad. Systems don't need a big bad. It helps, but they don't need it. What they need is relevant support for all factions at a decent price point. And this is true of every product from every major wargaming company. If you produce armies, you need to make sure they're supported and have good rules. And good rules doesn't mean that they perform well on the tabletop. It means fun, thematic rules that don't mean that you're bad on the tabletop. If you have good rules, good miniatures, and you can afford it, the players will come. Historically, factions like the Eldar are popular factions, but when people see how much it costs to buy Eldar and all the fine cast parts there used to be and old miniatures, it drives them away in a world of being able to buy dozens of plastic Space Marines in all new sculpts for cheaper prices. There are a whole series of economic things going on here as well as the tabletop rules. And I feel it's much the same with the old world, and this is part of why I did my videos talking about the old world is dead. I consider it dead because you cannot walk into a store and buy these factions. You have Bretonnia and Tomb Kings. Outside of those factions, you have to fish for miniatures online, and even then, some of the ranges, principally Chaos Dwarves, Lizard Men, and Wood Elves being in the base game as well, the supported quote-unquote factions, are not available in their entirety. So without these ranges being available at all, you can't get into them from the ground floor. So how are they meant to thrive? So really, the old world is currently a bit of elves, high elves and dark elves. It's some orcs. And the dark elves really is underwhelming because there's no characters. It's the dwarves. It's the Bretonnians, it's the Tomb Kings, but it's really the Bretonnians and Tomb Kings show, with the Orcs now being sort of the third leg, because they're the factions that are getting support. But they're doing it with 20-year-old miniatures, which means that they don't tick off the criteria of fun new miniatures for people, and at the price point it's all coming out at, although it's in line with inflation of what those miniatures should cost over time. Remember, they've gotten cheaper over time. You're not paying for sculpting prices. You're not paying for building the die. All of that's being paid off. If Lockheed Martin can produce the F-35 stealth multi-million-dollar fighter for less and less money each year because they're building more of it, they're recouping their costs, Games Workshop can probably spare a few dollars, unless they think that they've got a worse bottom line to feed than the military-industrial complex does. As for the vampire counts returning, the whole thought process behind the vampire counts not being involved in the old world in the first place, that, the Von Carsteins have been beaten back. I've said from day one, and any of you who are frequent listeners would be aware of this, that there are so many other more interesting bloodlines to explore. You have the Necrarchs, the Blood Dragons, the Strigoi, the Lamians. Why don't we look at those? Or even just necromancers. This isn't that far removed from the time of Heinrich Kemmler, who, frankly, it's been 30 years, let's get him a new model. Or you could look at Blood Dragons under Wallach and the Blood Knights, or you could look at Abhorrash, the first Blood Dragon. You could do Strigoi. I think that maybe Melchior or Zacharias the Ever-Living, perfect inclusions for Necrarchs, and of course Neferata. The Lamian bloodline. So there are plenty of fun things you can do, especially if they're focusing content in this part of the world, because we know the Blood Knights are active in Bretonnia, so they're very easy to get involved, and so is Heinrich Kemmler, also very active in Bretonnia, so they're in this part of the world at this point in time. Perfect. Neferata is off in the World's Edge Mountains, where orcs and dwarves are working. So there are plenty of things that can be done there, and I've said this from day zero. So if they're bringing it in later, it's more a case of, why didn't you do this before, you idiots? Alright, next rumour is the Warhammer Underworlds is ending production this year. There is one final box planned after Wintermoor, along with limited time reprint boxes of the most popular warbands of the past, coming in quarterly waves as a last hurrah. It was intended for this game to be a gateway game and a competitive casual tournament product, but it didn't succeed at either, and the cost in board and cards makes them less profitable than the Warcry terrain, so it's being dropped. Yeah, we always knew this was going to sort of happen. It was a great thing while it lasted. The whole cool miniatures, it was sort of a sounding board. They could put out miniatures for Underworlds, and the ones that really caught people's attention that they loved, like the Slangors, they end up making into a full product range. And what a great way to sort of test the waters. I really like it for that. But the whole seasonal tile and hex-based thing, and not being like a nice plastic gaming board, and forcing people to have outdated warbands and such. It's just scummy, and it's not a recipe to get people to buy into the wider game system, especially if they like this 4-player tile-based system where it's a board game. That doesn't mean that it's going to just translate across into more people like a miniature in this game, therefore they'll buy into the other. Marketing people like to think that it's that simple, but it's just not in reality. So, not shocking. And in another case of not shocking, the next rumor is the Legions Imperialis has massively underperformed. Some of the blame is placed on people expecting epic 40k again and not wanting a pure Horus Heresy on a smaller scale. Others blame the launch window. Expect support for another year or two, but like Aeronautica, this game won't be around for very long. I'm just going to say, told you so. Again, these are rumours, can't confirm if they're true. But I have been saying this for how long? You're not bringing out enough support quickly enough for the game with enough stuff in it. It's a boring game. You've got too little variety in it. Too few factions. The starter set makes absolutely no sense. In fact, Games Workshop stores didn't even use the full starter set for the intro games. They were recommended to use a damaged single Warhound Titan versus a series of random Imperial vehicles. What the hell is the game trying to be? And the launch window is not an issue. When they launched it is fine. The fact that Old World, though, was announced the week after and it dropped a month after meant that everyone who had money that might have bought into both systems simply held on to their money, and instead of buying Legions Imperialis, which they might have been keen to try, with the success of things like Total Warhammer, people were more excited to try the Old World. So, limited finances, like money's a big thing, and it factors into all of the things I talk about in this channel. People have limited resources. If they're going to spend money on this hobby, and they've got the choice between blowing it all on Legions Imperialis and then having no money for the next big release, what are they going to save their money for? No, of course they're not going to buy Legions Imperialis in that case. And because the game system launched with such a wet diarrhea thud onto the ground, more of a splat, it's just not caught on with the community. And it does not mean it's a bad game. It just means that it is being set up to fail from the get-go due to very bad corporate decision-making, because the company could not let it breathe. They could not give it the support it needed in a timely fashion. They just wanted to get greedy, and that's all it can be said. It is pure, illogical greed, and it's illogical because you're spiting yourself with the decision-making process here. It's greedy because they thought they could nickel and dime players. We'll release stuff all now and charge a full price. Then release a tiny bit more and charge a full price for that. As if these are full game systems. If I went and bought Epic back in 1992, I would get a massive faction with dozens of different rules for different factions all crammed into the one book. And I would get 2 big armies in that starter set. Instead, you get 2 small armies in a starter set that is 3 times the cost of that one from the 90s. And you get an absolute pittance of units for 2 factions and no others in your game. And then they phased out other game systems to bring it in. It's just, why would you not think that this would destroy Legions Imperialis? Because the people who made these decisions thought they would get away with it. They just thought, fuck it, the community are dumb. They'll just buy whatever we decide they'll buy. If we want to nickel and dime them and we'll release half the Astartes stuff now, even though we've got the other half ready to go, instead of putting it in the same book, no, fuck them. They'll buy it anyway and we'll make double the money that we would have made. And then they didn't, and now they got the shocked Pikachu face going, wow, how did this backfire? And it's backfired because you were greedy. And people are frankly sick of it. They are sick of being sold half a game. They're sick of being sold half a fucking codex. Stop selling people 8 units, calling that an army, and then 12 months later doing an update which adds another 4 units, and now people are like, hang on a minute, now this starts to actually resemble an army, and then why didn't you fucking do that in the first place instead of superseding all my stuff? that is just Legions Imperialis to a T. And also, I hate the name. Still, it just does not roll off the tongue. Next rumour. The Necromunda and Horus Heresy both sell very well and turn a profit and will be the most stable game system in the foreseeable future. Middle-earth has seen a surprising uptick in sales this year. That's hard to believe since there is none in stock. But with the external license, its support will always be less than the rest and don't expect to go anywhere anytime soon. I will add to that though, the Middle-earth license actually expires next year. So it's up for renewal. Maybe I could buy the license. I've got no money, but I would do things with that game. Alright, expect more than Stormcast Eternals to get a large range discontinuing. Post-lockdown/Indomitus, the people holding the purse strings, mainly those who jumped in from other parts of the tabletop pie, like trading card games, have been asking, what do you mean people buy a product and then may go a decade without buying more? And the new mandate from the company is that a customer should be replacing their army every 3 to 4 years, long enough to grow attached emotionally, but not long enough to be unwilling to buy another. I get what they want, and if I was running the company, would be trying to do this, but in more subtle ways. People do not want to buy another army every 4 years by being forced to. People want to buy another army every 4 years because they want to buy something different. I know that's a hard concept to get your head around, but if you just make it so their army sucks and is unfun, at the price point and people feeling embittered because they've sunk money into these factions, is not going to convince them to go and buy another product, it's going to convince them to leave your product. This is my personal opinion. It's kind of hard to back with facts, but comment section, this is where you jump in. If you were just told overnight that your faction is being removed from the game, or being made very, very bad deliberately, just for them to try and get you to buy another faction, is that going to convince you to buy another faction? Or, like in my train of thought, you're just going to be really annoyed now and just drop the game or play another army that you already have? What are you going to do? Let me know in the comments. This means a few armies / sub-factions are going away in the next 2 years. I think that's going to mostly affect armies which are closer to what we see in Warhammer Fantasy Battles. So you might keep Fire Slayers, but I could see them going too similar to Dwarf Slayers and Dwarves in the Old World. They might not be the only ones. Obviously, the Cities of Sigmar stuff that is not the new Cities of Sigmar releases, like all the old Warhammer Fantasy stuff, they will obviously want to get rid of that. So I imagine all of those factions, Dark Elves, High Elves, anything from Wood Elves, Dwarves, Empire, all of that, whatever is left now will be gone very, very quickly. Steam tanks, the works. And funny enough, actually, something similar to that in this next sentence. For Age of Sigmar, dispossessed, any High Elf, Wood Elves outside residents and Dark Elves will be retired. Others will be moved into battle tomes, such as the Daughters of Cain. It's unconfirmed, but don't expect Fire Slayers to be around forever. There you go. I actually only had a quick read of this before I did this video. I promise you, hand on heart, swearing on my medals from the Queen, I actually did not read that sentence, so my prediction is entirely, there you go. For 40k, the Death Guard, Adeptus Mechanicus, Genestealer Cult, and Adeptus Astartes are all losing a few units. That was predictable. The Harlequins are going completely, and the Grey Knights are going to become a universal ally option for Imperial forces, rather than a standalone army with custodes intended to fill their former niche. How do I feel about that? Codex Demon Hunters and Codex Witch Hunters are the real place where the Grey Knight story begins. Okay, it's not the very beginning, but think of it this way. We don't talk about the Harry Potter stories as beginning with Harry Potter's birth. We really talk about them from the point where the first book starts. that's the meat and potatoes of it, right? From, is Chamber of Secrets the first one? No, I think that was the second one. Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone if you're in the US, because apparently you don't know what a philosopher is. So, the first Harry Potter film, I'm not a big Harry Potter fan, but we don't count it from Harry Potter's birth. We say the story starts with that first book, and you get flashbacks to earlier stuff. It's kind of the same with Grey Knights. Grey Knights, as you know them today, are 3rd edition, and they got messed with by Matt Ward in 5th edition, who did both good and bad things to them. Demon Hunters was the counterpart to Witch Hunters. So Demon Hunters was Grey Knights, Witch Hunters was Inquisition and the Sisters of Battle. These books worked much like how Chaos used to work, with having different parts that complemented the whole. And there was a very diverse range of stuff available when it came to like inquisitorial warbands and things like that as a part of Grey Knights. And slowly that sort of flavour gets removed from these armies and makes them a lot more homogenous until you're left with pretty much just guys in silver armour. And all the things that once made them unique aren't so unique anymore. And although the Grey Knights was a small and elite force with not many unit types back in 3rd edition or in their 5th edition revamp, they tripled the amount of units they had, but it still was not a lot of units compared to a Codex compliant chapter. Although they didn't have a lot of units, they were closer in scale, the range of units they had to the chapter, than they are today. Today, the Grey Knights have nowhere near the variety of unit slots and unit types available compared to other factions. And so they don't feel like a full faction anymore, because, even though they once were, because there's so little stuff in that army. And so that's why they're being moved to an allied detachment. In reality, it's just down to the army never kept up with the game changing around it. It's similar to the Eldar. The Eldar have barely expanded in what they've got since the 90s. I mean, you think about it, they haven't added any extra Phoenix Lords or Aspect Warriors unless you count the Shadow Spectres at Forge World. Good luck buying those. They haven't really added any extra vehicles. The Fire Prism's been there since the 90s, the Grav Tank, 90s, Wave Serpent, 90s, Vipers, Jet Bikes, all 90s, Warwalkers, 90s. They haven't added anything to the Eldar, and so the Eldar as a range hasn't expanded. The Dark Eldar, okay, they got a couple of flyers. The Eldar did as well, but a couple of flyers. The Tantalus over at Forge World, but that's basically it. So the Dark Eldar haven't really expanded either. Very few models now extra compared to what they had in 3rd edition 40k, going back to 1999. And so these factions don't feel like they've grown. But look at the Space Marines. How much have they grown by? What are we at? Over 200 entries now on Games Workshop's web store for Space Marines, let alone all the unique chapter stuff. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. How many squeaks have the Space Marines made? It's an army that constantly gets supported, constantly gets new things, and then sells well because it's constantly supported and constantly gets new things, and they're nice new miniatures that are cheaper and more fun to play than other factions. And then the other stuff falls by the wayside, doesn't sell well, doesn't get the support it deserves because it's not selling well, and factions failing becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I can be wrong, definitely, but I think this is the reality of the situation. I think Grey Knights have fallen neatly into that. As for the Harlequins being gone completely, yep, again, the faction is not big enough to be self-supporting, and they could roll it into the regular Eldar, or they can remove it, and it's one less product they've got to make. The Genesteal cults, Adeptus Mechanicus losing stuff. I think the Adeptus Mechanicus is going to get a 30k plastics release, and that's partly going to lead to 40k's Adeptus Mechanicus downsizing, because Games Workshop does not like the idea of people being able to use miniatures in 2 game systems. They feel like instead of you getting more value for money, that's them taking a loss because you would have bought 2 armies if they forced you to. Because these people are idiots. They're idiots who run a company not because they're good at it, but because they're in the right place at the right time and you're the right people to get put into positions of power. Stop treating them like a professional company, viewers. I promise you they're not, as a person who ran a professional company. Both major titles will see another attempt at an ever-chosen / Eye of Terror mini battle tome codex intended for narrative / smaller games. The first two are Battle Tome The Blighted Crusade and Codex Imperial Agents, releasing this autumn. Sounds like bloat. This is part of a watchification. Oh no, sorry. I'm reading this wrong. This person's made up a word. A WOTC-ification. I'm guessing that's a Wizards of the Coastification of Games Workshop. At the advice of shareholders and US consultants. Oh, we love consultants. I do it for free, Games Workshop. Why don't you listen to some of my ideas? Smaller, faster games with more focus on ease of entry. How's that working for 40k? The Combat Patrol and Spear tips are intended to function like Magic the Gathering. Pre-constructed commander decks. Expensive lifestyle products that a player can buy, put together and have balanced games against each other. The intent over time is less players with 30,000 points of an army and more players with 2,000 points in every army. Again, people don't think like that. I don't know how many times I've got to say it. People do not want to be forced to do things. Humans are pig-headed by nature. There are some people out there who are easily manipulable, but most of you, and most of you listening, if you've stuck with the Outer Circle through all of these years, you know my thoughts on this. Humans know what they like in something, and they know what they don't like. And trying to make something bad deliberately or good deliberately in order to manipulate them, it has diminishing returns the more you do it. It's a silly approach, and you can't force this thing to happen. I don't like it. And this is not Wizards of the Coast. This is not Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering is a cheap game compared to Warhammer. No, it really is. There are people there going right now, oh, but look how much this card is worth. And yeah, there are expensive cards. But the basic cost of entry into Magic the Gathering is just buying a $40 deck of cards. And you can play games. Okay, you're not going to win tournaments, but you can play games. That is not the case with Warhammer. The basic cost of entry is in the hundreds. Even small games like Kill Team is in the hundreds. You can't have something this expensive in this economy especially. Like, they don't grasp it yet. It's not COVID anymore. People, I'm not one of them, I never was, but people are not getting free money from the government anymore. The printing presses have slowed down because there's hyperinflation going on everywhere, even if the governments of the world don't want to acknowledge that they fucked the economy through forcing lockdowns. And because of this, we have less money. Because our money is worth less. Because there's more money out there in the world. It's not in our hands, though. It's in the hands of people like those who run Games Workshop. And because there is more supply of money and our money is worth less and we're working longer hours to buy less miniatures, what makes them think we want to buy more miniatures? You've got to understand what the trials and tribulations of your customer base is going through if you want to appeal to it. And they don't. They just want to try and milk us for all we're worth without understanding there are ways of milking us that we like. Just do those. With the rise in alternative hobby products such as paints and tools, the range of Citadel paints is going to be reduced. If something has an option where a contrast paint can fill the role, both expect the base and the layer of said colour to go away. Primers are also being cut down to Grey Seer, Chaos Black, Mechanicus Standard Grey, Iron Warriors, Xandri Dust, and Death Guard Green. Too long don't read, the COVID boom is over and cost cuts are happening to avoid increases in outgoings. Yeah, no shit, but again, it's a company that's out of touch with the consumer. If you produce what the consumer wants, they will buy it, provided you put it at the right price point. People come back year after year and buy Apple products, even though Apple are the worst company on the planet. So be it. That's personal opinion, of course, it's not objective fact. But their products are incredibly overpriced for the actual performance of the products. And their operating system is trash. Linux is better. But they're cutting costs within Games Workshop, trying to downsize product range, which I agree with. I do agree with those approaches, but those are internal measures. They are not what you should be relying on because they have diminishing returns. Look at all the Games Workshop stores that were closed down under Kirby. Okay, under the Kirby years, he turned all those stores into one-man stores. They shut down stores. They moved them into terrible parts of neighborhoods, all in an effort to save money, and it worked. But it's a temporary fix because you can only do it once. And once you've done that to every store, you've moved them all into shitty areas with cheaper rent, reduced the staff down to a single person, the stores are smaller, and yep, you save that money. You can't do it again. You can't move the store anywhere cheaper. You can't get rid of any more staff because you'll have none. It's a one-trick pony. You can only play it once. And this is the problem with these kind of cost-cutting measures. You can only pull it once, and I guarantee the consultants they hired said the same shit I've been saying for years on here, except I get ignored because it's salty, and when they say it, it's a fucking revelation, which is very frustrating for me. Because I'm talking business sense here. I say you can't have this kind of bloat. It's unsustainable. Your production capacity has to meet the size of your actual production needs and requirements, and what is your shipping like, and all the things I brought up over the years, and people just said, oh, Mackie, you're salty. I'm fucking right! I'm fucking right! You know, fuck. Bonus gossip. Apparently, no Chaos Dwarves are not happening. They look too anti-Semitic for it to happen, and Games Workshop has a problem with it being seen as a Nazi company, and won't touch them again, at least not in the original sense. Here's the thing, Chaos Dwarves are not Semitic. They are, well, there might be a Semitic peoples, I guess, looks-wise. They're Assyrian. They're Assyrian with very, very small touches of Babylon. But the cruelty, the personality of them, the art depictions, the ziggurat structures and all that, that's just lifted straight from Assyria. Even the names of many Chaos Dwarf characters revolve around the names of ancient Assyrian conquerors, generals, and kings. So, very fascinating history. I would highly recommend those of you who lean towards history to look into the Neo-Assyrian Empire. It is absolutely fascinating. One could say that they broke the yoke, as it were. They're the people that crushed and repressed so many other people around them that it changed how people saw being ruled over by a foreign power in the Middle East. And it's because of them that big empires started to happen, essentially. There were empires before them, but none were as big as them, and they paved the way for the Persians that would come after. Very fascinating. But of course, Chaos Dwarves have big noses, so, you know, whatever. The Old World sold a lot of Tomb Kings models, but very few Bretonnians by comparison. Bit trivia there, apparently. The high-up Old Guard dinosaurs are really not happy with people like Peachy and Suggs giving insider secrets and getting people on social media to demand artist credit on paint jobs. Yeah, well, like I said, the company is run by people who got into their position by knowing the right people and being in the right place at the right time. It's just nepotism. And Games Workshop is run poorly because of Old Guard dinosaurs. That's not to say that there aren't plenty of new people they brought in who are useless as well. And there will also be a handful of people who are true reformers who want to improve Games Workshop as a business. Those people are out there. The problem is, and this goes without saying, right? People on the internet, mostly those who like to criticize the outer circle as salty, blah, blah, blah. What they fail to grasp is that companies like this are a boys club. I know because I've been a member of the boys club in a company, right? The secret management meetings that go on, the sitting there with beers after work when the companies have strict policies about drinking alcohol in the office, and all these things happen when you're high up in the structure, okay? We discuss the workers and we discuss the managers, and the minute you're on the out, the company finds ways to get rid of you. And if you're going against the other boys in that office who are having beers on Friday Arvo, no, you're not long for that company. No matter how good you are at your job, they will find a way to get rid of you. And it could be as simple as they won't fire you. Instead, they'll say your position is redundant. Your role is no longer needed within the company and the corporate structure, and they'll get rid of that position. And they'll come up with an identical position and put an ad in the paper the next day, and it will have all the same criteria for the position, but it'll change. Instead of the marketing manager, it will be the promotions manager. That's how companies work. This is the way corporations actually work deep down. They are not based on merit. Meritocracies are gone. Meritocracies are gone because people don't come to a company, do a great job, and stay there forever anymore. People shop around companies. They're constantly moving on. The grass is always greener at the next company, especially if they're shit. Right? People who are shit tend to move companies a lot because it's worked out pretty quickly that they're shit. And they move companies a lot because then the companies who they cause all the problems for get rid of their problems. They'll give them a glowing bunch of praise to, as a going away golden handshake. Say, look, we're getting rid of you, but, we'll give you a really good talking up for your next job to help you get employed elsewhere. We won't screw you over so you don't come and sue us later. And the shit employees go to another job and they'll have all this praise and they'll go in and they'll ruin that place and then they'll leave there and they'll flee the sinking ship like the rats they fucking are. Business is full of them, okay? Dropping some truth bombs here today. And Games Workshop is one of these companies. It is full of good old boys up the top who are very, very strictly boys-only crowd. I don't mean that they won't accept women, but more like you're one of the boys, right? You're a team player, and you do things by their book, and you don't have a brain that thinks for yourself and come up with new ideas. No, we like the system as it is. It's worked well for us. We're comfortable in the system. Don't try and change the system. That's the way it is. And people think I'm salty and hate Games Workshop. I don't hate Games Workshop. I hate Games Workshop corporate. I think the company is wasted potential. They make very, very nice miniatures. Okay? There are some underwhelming sculpts along the way, and I'm harsh on them because someone has to be. Nobody is. Everyone just sings their fucking praises all the time online, or they do clickbait articles about it. But someone's got to say, at least the truth as they see it. I'm not saying I'm the objective one reality that's correct. I'm just saying that as I see things, this is the truth. And, I would work wonders in that company if I was in Kevin Roundtree's position. Not because I'm the best person to do the job, but because I'm willing to find the people who are and put them into a position where they will make it work. Instead of just keeping all these old hands around because they're the old hands. And I get it, these people are like fucking parasites. You can't get rid of them. If they've been there for 20 years and they love their position and they've got the backing of all the other management, you have a mutiny on your hands unless you fire the bunch of them. You fire a bunch of them at once, then the shareholders turn around and go, ooh, what's going on here, and you become the boogeyman as the CEO. Your hands will get tied. Again, it's dark out there in the business world, people. And if you think I'm wrong about this, please argue it in the comments. I really want to see your thinking. Let's talk over the last few rumours before I rant too much. A lot of stores saw the change from Games Workshop to the Warhammer shop, seeing a shocking decline in regular attendance. At first, this was waved away as COVID, as many things were, by the wrong people in jobs they were shit at, but there have been more store closures in the last 5 years than the 20 before it. People would rather shop online or go to a third-party store with more tables and amenities. Yeah, but people are actively encouraged not to go to Games Workshops. The company themselves, again, policies written by old grumpy managers in the actual head office who shouldn't be in those positions, they treat their stores as a point of entry. People come in, sell them a starter set, they go away, they don't come back and play and pay. And no matter how much they encourage that, and they say, you can come back to the store, we'll show you how to build and paint it, you can play some games. That's not what they want. The managers do. Most of the managers in these stores want that community. They're like me. They grew up with that gleam in their eye in a Games Workshop store. It was the time of their life. Now they're 30-year-old, 40-year-old managers going, man, this sucks. But if I don't do what corporate says, which is sell them a starter set and fuck them off, I'll lose my job. And the managers that hang around the longest tend to be the ones that play that corporate game and have no shame in playing that corporate game. That's, again, one of the realities of the situation. And if you think I'm wrong about any of this, like I said, the comment section's there. Fill your boots, leave a dislike, fuck off. Now, blame it on COVID? No. You put stores, instead of in a nice big shopping mall like they were when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, with a lot of turnover, kids going to see the Lord of the Rings movies, we'd walk past the Games Workshop store with the Lord of the Rings game on the way in. Isn't that an advertisement? Come out going, oh my god, I'm so pumped, I just watched the Fellowship fight a cave troll. And they're like, would you like to come into this store and have your Fellowship fight a cave troll? Fucking sold! No, now it's like, hey, down that dank, dark alley down there where the passed out drug addict that I have to step over to get into the store, I can go into a Warhammer store which has no tables, practically, has 8 items on the shelves, tries to sell me an Age of Sigmar starter set. Is that really the environment I want to go into? No. So naturally, less people buy in the stores. Inconvenient location, the stuff they probably want is probably not going to be stocked there, and people know this, so why the hell would they go in there? I feel for the store managers in this regard, and it's silly because the stores, as I've said in my Fixing Games Workshop video, stores are your point of recruitment. You want to get people into this hobby, there it is. You've got a ready-built audience. That's the one thing that they have over all of their competition. No matter how successful other tabletop games are, Games Workshop has a store that they can recruit people with. And it costs money. But that's an overhead that if you manage it right, is acceptable loss to run. Because you bring people in, you create that sense of community, and when people see other people having fun in a store, they want to buy into it themselves. The end. A lot of leaks of screenshots and sprues are not actually leaks, but apparently official intended public relations, PR. The excitement makes word of mouth spread faster than the plague on places like Twitter and Reddit. Yeah, probably. White Dwarf sells terribly, and despite changes to insert cards, rules, and more painting guides, and the internet's largely made it redundant, they've just been holding on to big issue 500. It's almost been cancelled twice in the last 5 years and probably go all digital or on hiatus in the next year. I've been saying this for a long time. White Dwarf's problem is it's not a hobby magazine. People will pay money for a hobby magazine. They will not pay as much as White Dwarf costs. Has too many ads. Not that it's the most ads it's ever had. It's actually got less ads now than it did at many points in what I would call its prime. The thing was, though, you had awesome narrative campaigns. You had, all these articles showing tons of conversions. I'm not talking 2 pages of bland shit. They call it bland shit soup is what I call it, where people just show some shitty conversions they've done of 5 models covered in textured paint. I hate it. I don't consider it hobby. Sue me, again, I don't care, I'm allowed an opinion. Bland shit soup. Fucking sepia tones and blood tones. That's all they fucking know, these people. Usually looks like trash. But it gets into White Dwarf for some reason. People don't want to see that. People want to see you taking an entire army of Space Marines and converting the hell out of it into something really bloody cool and doing a good job of painting it. But the last couple of issues of White Dwarf I've seen in some of these online articles, I've seen miniatures that look like they were painted by a 5-year-old. No, strike that. I've seen some 5-year-olds who paint better than this. We are not showcasing the best and brightest in this hobby. We are showcasing trash. And we're showcasing it to make people feel good about themselves. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not in this for the making people feel good about themselves. This is my selfish reasons. I am into this to see a new generation come up and aspire to overtake our standard. And the standard of some of these miniatures, they're fucking overtaken it and they haven't even touched a model yet because they're that bad. I want to see a generation that comes into this game and is inspired and sees the work we've all done and goes, that is amazing, I want to do that one day. And not only do they do it better than we ever could. And they get to rub it in our face and say, look at this old timer, I'm better than you. And I get to say, fuck yeah, you are, and it's amazing, and I'm so happy that you've had this opportunity. And instead, we've gone the other way about it. We're now showcasing mediocrity. Here's unpainted stuff. Here's badly painted stuff. Here's stuff that looks like it was painted with a house brush. Let's show that in White Dwarf. Who wants to buy that magazine? Not to mention print media. It's expensive, print media at that. White Dwarf is so expensive now. used to be like $5 when I was a little kid, and then it went to $10. It was getting pretty absurd. Now, what is it, like $20? Something like that. It's got to be something ridiculous like that. I stopped buying it. And when you do open it, it's just Army of the Month. Here is the studio painted army of this faction. It's like, cool. I'm not inspired by that. Give me more. Give me dioramas. Do something scenic with it. Like, inspire me. Make me want to recreate it. Like, bring back that youthful energy that I had. Please. I'm dying for that sort of stuff. Yeah. So that takes us to the end of those rumours. I know it's a boring episode visually, because they're rumours. What the hell was I going to put on screen? A picture of White Dwarf magazine? Don't think that would help issues much. You'd still fall asleep. A lot of ranting on the way. I know I'm a horrible, evil person, but I just corner how I see it, okay? Doesn't mean I'm right. I really want to stress that. I'm not objectively right, but I'm trying to justify to you why I think the way I do when I say these things. And it's up to you to make of it what you will. And if you disagree with me, that's cool. That's fine. You're going to disagree with me. I'm cool with this. But please all I'm saying is look at the actions of the company and tell me if they're worth you defending them over, because I don't frankly think they are. I think the company is very badly run and that they succeed in spite of having some of the worst people on the planet running it. It's only because it's such an awesome intellectual property, has some of the coolest concepts in sci-fi, and it's been established for a long time. If it wasn't for these aspects, the company would be dead and is rocking by, coasting by on those credentials. But there is only so long that can last for. And if these rumours are to be believed, that time is coming to an end. Like I said in the previous episode, I think the 2040s is the crunch period for Games Workshop, the end times for the company, if they continue down this route. You can't just take people's factions, remove them and invalidate them to force them to buy something else. Humans don't work like that. And despite all my blustering, characterful comments that I make throughout these videos when I'm the character of Macca and I dial it all up to level 11, do understand this. I'm going out of my way to understand the players as best I can. The player is not, in general, a moron. The player is someone who has found joy in their life in consuming this product. And they grow attached to the product and they find it fulfilling. If you turn around and you try and deny them that, they get very upset. That's why I cop so much flack from the community. Because when I talk about these things, on some level, I'm denying them that. Because accepting my saying that there is a problem means that they have to accept there is a problem with something they love. And that is a bitter pill for people to swallow. And many people would rather deny there is a problem in the first place and call you names and denigrate you and all those things and send you death threats. Don't worry, nobody's succeeded yet. I mean, stabbed and shot at and I'm still here. But that's the reality of the situation. Games Workshop is not a healthy company. It's a company that is successful despite every attempt, it seems, to be unsuccessful. They have misused their resources. They have terrible management strategies. But because you guys listening love them so much, you have paid so much money over the years, you have kept them in business. You've kept them operating. You've done an admirable job of it. But now, the way investor confidence is in that exponential growth that companies have to achieve, all of a sudden, they're looking at their financials and realizing that they've got issues. And rather than trying to fix their business model, they're trying to scapegoat the issues. If these rumours are to be believed. Anyway, that's it for me. Back with the Outer Circle. Probably get one more video before I go, and then it'll be in the hands of Kat. See you on the next episode.